Hi, this is Chirag from scratchbuilds.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how I configure my OpenPilot CC3D flight controller using the latest ground control station version 14.10, the Mini Me. To configure or program the flight controller, you're going to need a USB cable. It's a mini USB port on the flight control board, so make sure you have one this kind of cable handy when you order the CC3D board or the copter from us. The receiver I'm going to be using is Lemon RX DSM2 compatible 6 channel, and the radio is DX8 Spectrum. Make sure you have done the binding before we move further. Next, download the OpenPilot ground control station. There will be a link on the screen. It's also in the description. The latest version is the 14.10. Once you've done that, let's connect the receiver to the flight control board. And this is the cable you want to use to connect the receiver. Okay, so grab the first three wires, which are black, red, and the white. This is going to go into channel 1 of your receiver. On my receiver, the first pins are for the binding, so I'm going to skip that and plug that into channel 1. Make sure when you plug it, the black is your ground and the white is your signal cable. And from there, just grab the second wire in that bunch and plug that into channel 2, and then the third one into channel 3, fourth in channel 4, and so on for 5 and 6. Okay, so once all the pins are connected, plug it back into the flight control board. Make sure the black wire goes onto left. That's the right way to connect it. If you have purchased the copter from us, the flight controller is already installed and the ESC wires are already connected. But let me show you real quick how you can install the flight controller on your frame and connect the ESC wires to the flight controller. Okay, so first off, the orientation of your flight controller. The arrow on the top of the case indicates that's the forward part of your flight controller. And if it's not in the case, you can tell the orientation really easy. The USB port should face backwards, so that mini USB port is the back of your flight controller. Okay, so make sure you install your flight controller in the right orientation. Once you've done that, it's time to connect the output from the ESCs to these pins over here. And as you can see, these pins are marked from 1 through 6. We'll be using the first 4 pins since we are installing it on the quadcopter. And if you have a hexacopter, you'll be also using pin 5 and 6. Okay, so for our quadcopter here, the wires from the front left ESC will go into pin 1. Front right will go to pin 2. Rear right will go to pin 3, and the rear left will go to pin 4. And that's how you connect all 4 ESC wires to the flight control board for your quadcopter. And once again, make sure you plug in your ESC wires the correct way. The outermost pin is the ground, the one in the center is your power, and the pin on the inside is your signal. Okay, so now we're done with connecting receivers, all the ESC motors to the flight controller. Next thing, plug in your mini USB to the flight control board, plug in the other end into your computer, and fire up the ground control station. Okay, once connected, click on the vehicle setup wizard. Next screen gives you a little warning that you must remove all the propellers. We've already done that, so click next. The next screen will ask you to upgrade the firmware on it, so go ahead, click upgrade, and it will ask you to disconnect the USB. Once disconnected, it will ask you to connect the board again, plug in the USB, and it will start upgrading the firmware. Okay, so once that is done, now you have the latest firmware on it. Okay, so click next, and on that screen click next again, and then select PWM and select next. Okay, after that select multi-rotor and click next, and then on the next screen select quadcopter X and select next again, and then rapid ESC and then click next. and click next one more time. Okay, so on this screen we're gonna calibrate the gyros. Make sure your copter is on the level surface and there are no vibrations or anything. Okay, click calculate and then the ground control station will start calibrating the gyros. Okay, so during this calculation, make sure your copter is very stable. It does not move or there are no vibrations around it, because your stable flight will depend on this calculations. Alright, so look like the process is almost complete. Alright, and then click next again. Alright, so this is something new in this new version. This is the ESC calibration, which was introduced in this latest release. Okay, so calibrating ESC is pretty simple. All the instructions are given here. All you have to do is make sure your copter is not connected to the battery. It's only powered with the USB cable, and all the propellers are removed. Alright, so once you have done that, click each of these check boxes and then click the start button. Okay, so once you click the start button, it will ask you to connect the battery. So go ahead, power up the copter. I'm gonna be using the battery with the EC3 connector because all my XT60s are in charging, so sorry about that, but go ahead, connect the battery and wait for ESCs to beep. Okay, so the battery is connected. Now hit stop to start calibrating the ESC and the ESCs will beep again. Wait for a few seconds for calibration to complete. Once done, it will ask you to disconnect the battery, but leave it connected as we're gonna need it in the next step to be connected again. Alright, so go ahead and click next. Okay, next up is the motor output calibration. In this step, we're going to find out each of the motor's minimum stable rotational speed so that the motors will not spin below that rate when armed. Okay, so click next, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start spinning each of the motors one by one by moving up the slider and try to find the best minimum stable speed for each of the motors. And while we're at it, we'll also want to make sure the motor is spinning in the same direction as shown in the picture. Okay, let's start with the first motor. Click the start button and start moving up the slider slowly until the motor start just spinning. Okay, and then move up the slider just a little bit so that you can hear the motor running really stable, and don't forget to check the rotation, the direction of the rotation. Okay, so once you're satisfied, click stop and then click next to go do the same thing for the next motor. It will do. Start again. Alright, so here we go. All the 4 motor output calibration is done. Next thing, click next. Okay, so the next screen is initial tuning. This is also a new feature that was introduced in the latest release of Ground Control Station version 14.10. And what it does is it provides you the best initial settings, the best initial PID settings for your particular frame. And as you can see here, they have a list of most popular frames available out there. And once you load the settings for your particular frame, you can always fine-tune it and make it more responsive to your stick movements. So the frame I have here is similar to DJI 450, or if you purchase the SB250, which is similar to the QAV 250 frame, select that configuration and click next. For our configuration here, I'm going to select DJI F450 and select next, and then click save to save everything we have done so far, to save it to the flight control board. Okay, so all the configuration has been saved to our flight controller, so now we can move on to the next section, which is to configure our transmitter. Alright, so click next and you will be presented to the transmitter setup wizard. But one thing we want to make sure before we start configuring our transmitter, that your receiver is already binded to your transmitter. Alright, so go ahead and turn on your transmitter. The way I have configured my transmitter is my channel 5 is on 3 position switch. You can either set it on 2 or 3 position switch, and the channel 6 is configured on the pod so that I can fine-tune my PIDs. Alright, so as you can see, our transmitter is on and we have a solid connection to our receiver. So go ahead and click on the transmitter setup wizard. Okay, once you click next, you'll get a message saying the copter is disarmed for your safety, and you will have to set up how you want to arm it. Until that, you cannot arm the copter. Okay, so click next, and then select acro, and then click next again, and then select the type of your transmitter. Mine is mode 2, so I'm going to select that and click next. Okay, so next step is input channel configuration, and all we have to do is follow just the simple on-screen instructions. Okay, first one, move the throttle stick. So go ahead, move your throttle stick. Okay, once that's registered, move the roll. So there we go. And then the pitch. So move the pitch stick, and then the yaw. Okay, so once that is registered, it will ask you to flick the switches. This is for the flight control mode. So I have set it up on 3 position switch here, so I'm going to flick that. You might have to flick it a few times to get registered. Okay, looks like that's done. And then I have selected knob as my channel 6, and that's going to be that slider on the screen. So move that all the way a few times. For the accessory 1 and 2, I'm not going to be using it, so I'm going to just click next and skip it. Okay, so next step is you need to center all your controls and trims. We haven't used the trim, so we're fine there. You also have to center your position switch, but if you have only 2 position switch, you can leave it on either. You can leave it on either side. Okay, so I'm gonna move it on center, and then move the throttle stick to the center. Sorry, and then this stick is already centered, and I'm gonna make sure the knob is centered. You'll hear a beep on this radio when it's centered. Okay, so once all the controls are centered, click next. Okay, so on this screen, you need to move all your controls to its maximum extent. So go ahead and do that. It's pretty simple. Move all your control sticks, your flight switches, and the control knob, and make sure you do that several times for each control sticks, knob, and switches to register its minimum and maximum value to the ground control station. Okay, once you're satisfied with that, click next. On this next screen, we want to make sure that we don't need to reverse any channels. So go ahead, move the control sticks on your transmitter, and make sure the picture on the screen mimics your stick movements. So as you can see, my throttle is working right, but the yaw need to be reversed. So I'm gonna check yaw, and then let's check the roll. Right, left. So I need to reverse the roll channel as well, so check that. And then okay, looks like the pitch channel also need to be reversed, so check the pitch. Okay, click next. Okay, so now on this screen we want to make sure that all the channels we have reversed are working as it should. So move all the sticks and make sure the picture on the screen mimics your stick movements. If not, go ahead, click the back button, and check or uncheck that particular channel to make it working. Okay, so it's all good here, so click next. Okay, so now we are into the arming setting. This section configures how you arm or disarm your copter. There are several options there. I'm going to select your right, which is the most commonly used. So when I hold my yaw stick all the way to the right for several seconds, it will arm the quadcopter. Okay, and the arming timeout is 30 seconds. You can change if you want to, but leave it to 30. What happens is if you arm the copter and don't give any throttle input for 30 seconds, it's gonna disarm the copter again. And for your safety, I recommend not to disable it. Alright, click save, and we're almost done. One more thing, go to the flight mode switch settings. This is where you can assign different flight modes to your 2 or 3 position switch. Okay, so as you can see in this picture, on 3 position of the switch 1, 2 and 3, I have flight modes 3, 2 and 1. You can change this order if you want to. I'm not going to go into the details of the flight mode, but as you can see on stabilize 1, we have set roll and pitch axis to attitude. That means it's on the stable mode. And on the stabilize mode 3, the stabilization 3, we have set the roll, pitch and yaw all to the rate. This is the flight mode where you can do all the crazy maneuvers like flips and whatnot. Okay, so if you're just starting out or not too familiar with the rate mode, make sure you don't take off in the rate mode, otherwise you will get no stabilization whatsoever. Okay, if you're happy with your settings, go ahead and click save. Okay, one more thing that I'd like to do, it's not necessary to do, is go into the output settings and move all the sliders to the same exact value. These are the same sliders as we did while setting up the lowest stable speed for the motors. So what I do is I try to set them to the average value of all 4 motors, and as you can see I have set them all to the value of 1141. Okay, click save and we are all done. Alright, so we're almost done here. The video is going a little bit over 15 minutes, but it normally takes about 3 to 5 minutes to configure everything. Okay, so let's test it out. Go ahead, click the disconnect button. Once disconnected from the computer, pull the USB. Okay, once you do that, disconnect the battery, turn off the transmitter. Also, in the future, anytime you change any settings on the flight controller, make sure you do the power cycle. So that's what we're doing here. Disconnect the battery, the transmitter is off, and then go ahead, turn on the transmitter. Once the transmitter is on, go ahead, plug in the battery. Again, I'm sorry for using this EC3 connector. All my XT60s are in charging right now. Okay, so there we go. We have a solid connection to the receiver. Okay, when you plug in the battery, the blue LED will flash fast. That is when the flight control board is booting up, and then it will flash low. That means it is ready to be armed. There's no error or anything in there. And then when you try to arm it, when you yaw all the way to the right, in my case, the blue LED will flash fast again. That is its arming. And once it's start flashing like a strobe light, you will know that the copter is armed. Alright, so let's go ahead and arm the copter. Alright, so now it's armed, and as you can see, the blue LED is flashing like a strobe. Okay, so let's go ahead and give it a little throttle and see what happens. Okay, so motors are armed and they're spinning. Go throttle up. Okay, looks like everything is working perfect. Throttle is all the way down, and if I don't give any input for next 30 seconds, the copter will be disarmed by itself. And if I want to disarm it now, all I have to do is yaw left and it will disarm the copter. As you can see, the LED is blinking slow again. Alright, so that is it. That is how you can configure your OpenPilot CC3D flight controller with the latest release of the ground control station version 14.10. Okay, so thank you so much for watching, guys. I think it's time for me to grab those XT60 batteries in charging, put them on a copter and get some airtime.